Hey, my name is Jesse. This is just another podcast where I talk with different individuals about different things in life. This talk was with Spencer Grant, a close friend of mine, a yoga and meditation practitioner, as well as a yoga teacher. In this discussion, we covered the following topics: the nature of practice, the impact of the environment on our practice, monastery life versus layperson life, the appearance of progression, the feeling of inadequacy, updating our personal dreams, and mental tripping versus self acceptance.
It's recording. Great. Okay, so this is Spencer from England. We're both in China. I'm Jesse, and Spencer has come up with the first topic that I've already forgot, which is
the nature of practice.
the nature of practice. Okay, so we're going to start
We're going
there.
to discuss on the nature of practice.
Okay,
Yes.
so yeah, what are your thoughts on the nature of practice, Spencer?
The nature of practice. The nature of practice evolves as an individual evolves, and the relationship between that person and the practice grows as they mature. In my own experience recently, the last 2 weeks, I've been journaling about my practice. I've been self-reflecting on my practice, which has had this inner outer direction. So I've been reflecting, and then the practice moves as a result of that self-reflection, which creates more self-reflection, which adds to the practice. So it's like this yin yang, in out, circular motion of practice and reflection, and then more practice, and then more reflection, and then more practice, and then more reflection, and then they both feed into each other.
Okay, so you
It's been
have
very interesting.
a ping-ponging positive interaction between your contemplative writing and your sitting maybe practices or yoga practices or Tai Chi
Yes.
practices, and they're kind of feeding to each other and helping to benefit your practice as a whole. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's pretty much been it. What's been your experience recently?
One thing that's
You've
come
had,
to my mind.
I know you've had some interesting situation in Shanghai. Can I ask if the Shanghai situation affected your practices in the last 6 weeks?
Well,
I'm very curious.
I think one part of practice for me is like, especially off the cushion, but also on the cushion, is dealing with my own personal aggression. And I guess you could say that's my like reactivity, but it's kind of like when I lose control of my emotions. I kind of feel like I have my emotional state, or my reactivity and my aggression is like a dog on a leash, and I'm kind of just trying to walk it in like a meditative walk. And then sometimes on the cushion, but more often off the cushion, there's certain external stimuli that, for whatever reason, due to my habitual tendencies, I get reactive, I get aggressive, I lose control of my emotions. And I think with this kind of situation where I feel, I don't know, I think even outside of a lockdown, I feel to some sense, just part of being a human, I feel restricted to some degree. There's always like some kind of a sense of limitations, whether it's like gravity or just like not being able to live out of society for very long, unless you like have really learned how to do that, which I haven't. So kind of being like restricted to the system. And then when I'm locked down in like a smaller space, even though I have everything I need, that those restrictions kind of, I don't know, I guess to some degree, I feel like restrictions, I have an aversion to restrictions, and it can sometimes stimulate reactivity and internal aggression towards life, a reaction of aversion towards life and the kind of just conditions which I face. Regardless of how good I have, it's more difficult to be content and grateful. Yeah.
Yeah, that the impact of our external environment and the overall environment in which we live in on our practice is pretty significant, isn't it?
I think, yeah,
And
especially for practitioners like myself that are not very far along, I assume that because I feel like I've become a little bit less reactive as I've practiced more and gotten older, and I assume, and it appears that like much more evolved humans or people that have progressed further along the path, they're more developed and evolved practitioners than myself, that the external environment affects them less than someone like myself. But yeah, for people that are unenlightened like me, then the external environment does have an effect, and the external conditions and the relationships and everything has an effect on our mind. So we have to pick the best.
I wonder how much there's. Sorry.
No need to be sorry though. Yeah.
Those practitioners who are far further down the line and they're more realized and have done significant more amount of practice over many more years. I wonder what the breakdown is in terms of how many of them were in aesthetic environments and how many of them were in environments that were quite testing to them, because there seems to be this two ways to go about it, right? Like you can have periods, you can go full asceticism and go off to an ashram or cave or some spiritual community and somewhere that's very suitable for doing the practices, or you can spend your time in environments that are perhaps more triggering and more challenging and more worldly, but then still have your own practices. And then perhaps in those environments, you can find a balance where like, you engage. You're living in that community, say a big city, you're living near Shanghai, I'm living in the west of China, Chengdu, and it's these high stress, high pressure environments. Yet within those environments, there's like pockets of activity and people and communities that you can find, be it nature or just activities and groups and support groups that are set up that kind of try to cultivate and support practice. And then obviously, if you want, you can take trips out and you can go and get some nature. You can maybe take a retreat in your holidays, or you can, spend more time away from the world. So yeah, coming back around, I wonder those high level practitioners, do they all just go off to the caves, or do they all just go off to north of India, or do they all just spend time in the ashrams and surrounded by the other highly realized beings, or how many of them, live that more in those more stressful, pressurized environments? Because it seems that it's two different paths, right? And yeah, I mean, and another thing as well, I heard Tony Robbins say in his documentary that I watched recently, he said he was making a joke about aesthetics and spiritual growth, and then he said, try being in an intimate relationship, try living with someone 24/7. That's growth. That's because that's gonna bring up all of that emotional reactivity within you, and then by being aware of it, then you can do the practice on it. It's because it's like when I've been on retreat before, I mean, it's super enjoyable and deep stuff does come up and it can be very challenging. When I did Tai Chi for 2 months every single day last summer, it was blissful, joyful, relaxing, calm, peaceful, profound, extraordinary. It was deeply challenging as well, and deeply it was stressful at times, and it brought up some deep stuff because I was in a space that allowed me to do it. At the same time, on the other side of the coin, it was almost like I was away from all of those daily triggers. I was away from the people and the environments back in the city that I worked in that was going to create those triggers. So yeah, I guess there's no right way to do it. It's just however you find your path, and just being able to treat everything as an opportunity for practice, regardless of whether you're in the big environment or in somewhere more chill.
Yeah, for whatever reason, when you talk about that, like I think of like I mean, like the Buddha, he like would like do all these ascetic practices where he would like not eat very much food at all, and who knows what else he was doing. And then also I've like read and heard some stuff about different Hindu yogis like being ascetics and like kind of putting themselves through some like difficult conditions. And then like I've seen certain like Christian monks or heard or watched videos about Christian monks maybe like whipping themselves or something, like causing some kind of suffering upon themselves. It seems like some practitioners superimpose some kind of suffering upon themselves. So although they're away from like the normal lives, they almost, I don't know what that's all about, but it seems almost like we all have, I don't know, one through the karmic lens, maybe we have to go through some kind of negative karma. So that's going to manifest in some shape or form, regardless of where you try to go to in the world. You're going to have to deal with some kind of suffering as long as you have negative karma, which most of us do that aren't enlightened. But what your lifestyle is, I think that depends on so many different causes and conditions, and your mindset, and your options, and your personal conditions, and whatever is propelling you to go the way you go based on what conditions you faced and what kind of mind you have. But I don't know. Also, one thing I wanted to say really quickly is that, earlier when you were talking about the nature of practice, I thought about like recently I've been trying to just do like basic like watching the breath practice, sitting meditations, like kind of shamatha, single point of concentration on just observing the sensations in the nasal cavity or whatever this is called just like feeling the breath coming in and out. And like I remember when I was first getting into practice, like so much reactivity and frustration would arise, just like trying to like observe it and not being able to most of the time. And then just getting frustrated with like how it's just like it didn't feel comfortable to try to do that. And I was I was so bothered and perturbed and troubled by just trying to like observe my breathing in my nose. And now like after almost 10 years of practicing, coming back to that practice, which I haven't really experimented with a lot in my life. And like still I can't focus on the sensations in my nose for like 95% of the time. I'm just spacing out. But I'm not as like bothered that I can't focus. And like I just go back to trying to focus on it. And then within like 3 seconds, I'm spacing out again. But like I'm not that kind of, I don't know. I think like just all the other practices that I have been doing, this old practice, the before and after, kind of gives me a sense of progression, like maybe looking at my art from like 10 years ago compared to now gives me a sense of progression. It's kind of that same kind of like compares. You can kind of, it's a nice little comparison that shows me something about how much progression I've made as a practitioner.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely satisfying. It's definitely creates even more motivation, I think, when you notice yourself having progressed.
Yeah, because it kind of it defeats that I don't know, the last couple of days I've been like I think just seeing other human beings and just having that habit of comparing myself to other humans, and then having like my old dreams when I was a kid of like wanting to become some kind of like famous artist, and then just seeing now like I'm not famous at all, I'm not very successful at all, not very many people like really appreciate or like my art. It's all relative, but it's not that big of a number compared to the dreams I was having when I was younger. And so then there's this kind of sense of self, like I'm not enough, like I haven't amounted to very much compared to like what I could have done if I was like more dot 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 dot. And I think whenever we like have something to compare, like an old movie we made, or an old piece of art we made, or an old practice that we used to struggle with, and now we try it again, and it's easier to just be with that practice and to just do that practice. It gives us a sense of progression, and it can kind of destruct that part of our mind that's like, I haven't amounted to enough, I'm not doing enough, I didn't do enough, I could have done so much more, I could have dot 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 dot. I don't know if you know what I'm trying to get at here, but yeah.
No, I get it. Yeah. And when something in the practice becomes available to you now that previously wasn't available to you, and then you become aware of that and you recognize that and you feel good about that, and you sometimes there might be even a bit of pride in that, but that's another thing to work with for another tale.
Yeah, ego can slip
but like
in
keeping
so
on
many
this issue of
places.
self, yeah, it can definitely slip in, but on the issue of self-worth, it can definitely help to reinforce that sense of, I am worthy now, I've always been worthy, but there's been this cloud of blockages and egoic attachments that have prevented me from having a sense of self-worth. And then, yeah, when you reflect on where your practice is now, and you see the growth in your practice, and then the effect that it has on the rest of your life, it can make you feel more worthy. And then, because then you start to realize that, the image and ideal that you had of who you should have been when you were younger was never actually real. It was this illusory fantasy that you held in your mind that you required in order to be worthy. That seems to be my experience.
That's an interesting perspective.
And yeah, and I think maybe perhaps that's true to an extent, and there's something to be said for, like having concrete ideas of where you want your life to go, and then seeing other people having met those concrete ideas in their lives, then you deciding, well, I want to be where they are, so if I can't do it and they seem to be able to do it, then perhaps I'm not worthy and I'm not good enough. But then later on in your life, you're not where you wanted to be, and you're not where they are, but you're somewhere else, and yet you begin to feel more whole and integrated within yourself. And I've been going through that kind of process in the last 12 months, and it seems to me that part of that is that, like, when I was 21, I had an idea of who I wanted to become, and then I felt unworthy because I wasn't that person. And then I saw other people that person and thought that, they're doing it, so I'm not worthy enough because they're there. And now that I'm older and I've gone through this kind of healing and integration process and recognizing my own self-worth, and a part of that is seeing the practice evolve and just generally inside feeling more integrated and whole and worthy, and then starting to recognize that, okay, perhaps, the karmic conditions brought me to where I am today, and now I feel a sense of worthiness and wholeness. And as a result of this, like, genuine worthiness and wholeness that has come together, perhaps where my life is going to go and the vision that I have for it is now something different and something new based on this actual wholeness. Whereas in the past, your idea of where you wanted your life to be and what you wanted out of your life was based on not feeling worthy, was based on not feeling integrated, was based on not feeling whole. Do you know what I mean? Not that there was anything wrong with that dream, not that there was anything bad about the dream, but just like the place that dream was coming from was just a place of feeling unworthy deep down. So then, like, once you start to feel more worthy, it's like your priorities change, right? And you start to have just a different sense of where you want to take things because you're in a new level of being, you're in a new level of consciousness. So naturally, you start to have new ideas.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to.
Sense?
Yeah, I think what you're saying makes sense. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I was just talking about this with my girlfriend on a walk, and basically, I need to, based on where I'm at now and my current situation and my current level of awareness and self-honesty, based off of the kind of evolution of my practice, I need to recalibrate my old pre-existing dreams that are deeply entrenched within my psyche and that are perpetuating me to keep acting the way that I act. And I need to kind of reanalyze them and re-sculpt them, so to speak, so that I can continue approaching my life and being a puppet of my dreams, so to speak, but doing it with a new updated like 2.0 version of that dream that's kind of imbued with more self-kindness and self-awareness and self-honesty and self-acceptance, kind of surrendering to the present moment and less expectations about the future and letting go, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like coming back to this topic, to karma and action, it seems when once you can accept the present moment, and once you can let go of those attachments that you just mentioned, then you're all of a sudden you're free to act in a more, you're free to act in a more powerful way. You're free to act with more connection to the present, with more connection to the essence and nature. You're free to practice in a way that is more in a way that is more unified with yourself and with your being. And then all of your actions in all areas of your life then become much more wholesome and much more connected and integrated. And then not only does it seem that you experience more peace and acceptance, but it gives your life space to move in more transformative directions because you're acting more from a place of connection to the source and connection to yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think when you say this, I mean, if you think I'm going off track from what you're trying to say, please let me know what you think I'm saying is different. But like when I think of it is like, I think the Buddha, he said that like aversion and attachment, I'll use the word grasping instead of attachment here. Aversion and grasping cause us to suffer. So, you know, if I have aversion to life, I'm like, no, 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 I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't like this. Or if I have grasping, like, I want this. Why don't I have this? I want this now. I don't like who I am now. I want to be that. I want to be this person. Then ultimately I'm not, like Eckhart Tolle is saying, surrendering to the present moment, which is, you know, I'm not accepting the present moment. I'm not accepting who I am, what I am, you know, I'm doing the other things. I'm doing there's a light right here that has like a 45-minute timer. I'm doing the aversion and grasping, which cause me to suffer. You know, every second I'm not surrendering to the present moment, that I'm not accepting who I am and what I have to face. I'm suffering because I'm like saying no, 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 and that reactivity of saying no, that's suffering, and that grasping and wanting something that I don't have, that's suffering. That's not acceptance. That's not surrendering, and then I'm out of my center. I'm out of peace of mind. I'm out of awareness. I'm on some kind of mental reactive or grasping thing. It's a trip, mental trip. I'm spun. I'm out. I'm not present anymore. Is there any other things you wanted to talk about tonight, or you feel like that's a good place to end it on?
We can end it on the mental trip.
We can what?
I said we can end it on the mental trip.
Okay. I mean, is there anything else that you want to talk about? Or you
No,
no,
I think I'm good.
you're good. All right, cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. This is fun.
Yeah. See you, buddy.
Namaste.
Peace. Until next time,
Peace.
take good care. Bye, Spencer. Thanks for doing this
You
with
too.
me.
Look after yourself.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.